Power has become a ubiquitous, indispensable tool for cycling performance. But here's a bombshell. The person with the highest power doesn't always win triathlons. In fact, they hardly ever do. So, do you want to know how to go faster without adding any more power? Keep watching. Triathletes are an obsessive bunch, and a power meter is an obsessive triathlete's favorite toy. All those numbers, all that data at your fingertips. And boy, does it feel good when that watts per kg number or that FTP number that you've been so obsessed with starts to increase.
But what if I told you that higher FTP or watts per kilo may not necessarily win you the race? No, not because you swim like a donkey or because you're a rubbish runner, because you're using your power all wrong, or because you're focusing so much on a number that you're missing out on some free speed gains out on the course. So today we're going to share some secrets on how you can get the most out of that power that you've obsessively trained so hard, and to make you as fast as possible on race day. Well, first off, let's talk about where you produce that power and what position it comes from. Now, it's all very well if you have an FTP in the 400s, but you're sitting up on a road bike. And then when it comes to race day, you're then in an aero position on a triathlon bike. Now, there will obviously be some transference of fitness, particularly up in FTP in the 400s, but you're not going to find yourself getting anywhere near as close to those numbers. Now, your power production needs to be specific. And also, you need to be able to produce that on a moving bike. Now, that might sound like an obvious thing to say, but these days, many people are doing their workouts and calculating that FTP on a static indoor trainer. Now, if you've ever put that indoor trainer onto a rocker plate, it's moving around, you'll suddenly notice that a lot of that power is lost through you having to stabilize, use your core whilst pedaling. Just focusing on that number on Zwift misses some of the key factors to going fast on race day.
Hills are your friend, and so are downhills. Well, downhills are everyone's friend, but you can use hills, uphills and downhills to your advantage to make the most of that power you've been working so hard to foster. You see, as hills get steeper, your speed decreases, and therefore there's less air resistance, and so the power that you're using is more effective at making you go forward. Of course, you're now fighting gravity, but so is everyone else. So it makes sense to use more of your power, burn more of those matches, as it were, on the steepest parts of the climb, so that you can save that energy that you would be using on the flats to overcome air resistance to rather push you forward going up the hill. Of course, that also means that on hills that are of a varying gradient, and all hills are, it makes more sense to use slightly more power the steeper the gradient and the slower you're going, and slightly less power the lower the gradient and the more you fight in air resistance. This principle also applies at the top of hills. It makes sense to push a little bit harder as you get to the top of the hill so that you accelerate quicker. So you don't waste time accelerating up to speed as you're going down the hill, and you're already at speed as you start going down the hill, and gravity starts helping you. And then when you do get up to high speed, it makes sense to limit the power just to use enough to keep your speed going and not try to keep accelerating, because you'll now be fighting very high air resistance, and most of the power that you add is just going to be wasted fighting that air resistance. Of course, this all has to take into account your own limitations. Just because it's more economical to attack a climb and push really hard on the steep climb doesn't mean you can now attack every climb with 1,000 watts and think that you are going to get to the finish faster. But it does mean that if you're clever about where you apply your power, sticking to that average power number that you're aiming for the whole ride, the whole way, is not actually the most effective route of getting to the finish line as fast as possible. You're better off using more power in some areas of the course, less power in other areas of the course, and over the course of the whole route, you might have the same average power, but your overall speed will be faster.
But then on flat parts of the course, it's a little more straightforward. Power will lead to forward progress pretty linearly. Now, the only principle really to stick to is keeping that power consistent. Peaks and troughs in your power output will actually just lead to damage to the muscles that are going to tire them, as opposed to keeping that power consistent. So on flat sections or flat courses, less variation in the power and stick to more consistent power output. It's also worth pointing out that higher FTP or watts per kilo will not necessarily win the race. A higher absolute power is better than a higher watts per kilo on flat sections of courses. And this is because as a rider gets bigger and can produce more power, the same watts per kilo, their frontal area that they have to push through the air doesn't increase at the same rate. So they can produce more power. Yes, they're having to push more through the air, but not quite as much as that power is increased, meaning they can go faster. That power increase overcomes and is greater than that increase in frontal area.
Whether going up, down or flat, one of the most important considerations is your power control. That is the ability to control the range of variance, how much your spikes are spikes and how low your valleys are valleys. As we've already said, it is necessary in every race to have various spikes and valleys to overcome surges from competitors or get over little rises or just exit a corner. You want to keep these surges to be somewhat limited. You don't want your surges to be really high and then the valleys after them to be really low. You rather want your surge to be a little bit less and the valley afterwards it to be a little bit less also. You and that other rider will both have the same average power, but one of you will have a significantly lower metabolic cost because you didn't go right up into the red. Being able to control this and keep your power profile, your range of variance across your whole ride as low as possible is going to lead to you getting around the course with significantly less power and a significantly lower metabolic cost. Compared to cycling races or draft legal triathlon races, non-drafting long distance triathlon races don't require nearly as many surges in power, but it's still important to be aware of this principle. When you're going over a little rise or surging out of an aid station or just matching a competitor as he goes past you, you need to be aware that you don't want to spike too high. Keeping a ceiling on those spikes is going to get you around the course with a low metabolic cost, and that's going to get you around the course faster.
Well, a power meter is an invaluable tool for improving our cycling performance, but do not rigidly stick to numbers in a dynamic race scenario course. That is not the fastest way around a course.
No, by all means, use your numbers and have a target power at goal pace that you want to set. But make sure your power meter is not slowing you down by limiting you when you should be pushing and by pushing you on when you should be taking it easy. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and it's given you some valuable information you could use for your next race. If it has, hit that thumbs up button to support the channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos. Happy riding.